Ever wonder why some leads convert while others never call back? Dynamics 365 might already know the answer. Before you do, today we're unpacking how D365 reads historical patterns like digital tea leaves to predict which prospects are most likely to close and which ones are just window shopping. Stick around to see exactly how those AI-driven scores are calculated, how your sales history feeds back into the system, and how you can use this to supercharge your pipeline for real growth. What D365 actually sees, the raw inputs that shape your pipeline. If you've used Dynamics 365 for any length of time, you start to notice something odd. Sometimes the system seems to spot a hot lead before you even realize someone's interested. It's easy to forget this isn't fortune telling. It's D365 quietly watching everything that happens in the background, connecting the dots in ways that most of us never see. You might think you're on top of your lead data, clicks, phone calls, a couple of website visits, but that's not even half the picture. Dynamics is clocking every digital footprint your prospects leave, and it's not shy about using any clue it can find. Take a typical sales lead. Let's say you meet them at an industry webinar. They fill out a contact form, so their info lands in your CRM. That's only the beginning. Next thing you know, their details are getting matched to web tracking logs, the pages they check out, how long they stay, and which links actually get clicked. But it doesn't stop there. Every time your team sends a marketing email and that message gets opened, even if it's at midnight, D365 takes note. When the lead visits your website again, the system records which device they're on, whether they bounce after a second, or if they poke around the pricing page for 10 straight minutes. Even the subtle stuff isn't lost in the mix. Did the lead open the pricing PDF in your last follow-up? Does their email reply land before you've had your first coffee? Did they click the LinkedIn link in your signature? Every interaction, no matter how trivial it feels, gets converted into a digital signal. And in D365, these aren't just dust in the database. They carry weight. The difference between opening 5 campaign emails and glancing at one for 3 seconds might be the reason 2 leads who look more or less identical on paper end up with totally different predictive scores. Now, here's where most sales teams get tripped up. You might log calls, update statuses, and even jot down those quick notes after a meeting. But the big question isn't just how much data you collect, it's which data actually tips the scales in your model. D365 likes to cast a wide net, pulling from the usual CRM records, contact info, account hierarchies, revenue band, industry, and then mashing that together with behavioral signals. Every clicked call to action, every time a recipient marks your email as not junk, every tiny yes or no that happens in the funnel. It blends the what they are facts with the how they behave moments. Let's look at a real scenario. Imagine you've got 2 leads, same industry, even the same job title. Both download a white paper. On the surface, they're twins, but D365 starts spotting the gaps right away. The first lead comes back, opens every single nurture email, and finally schedules a demo. The second barely scans the first 2 emails and disappears as soon as your rep calls. Guess who gets the high priority flag? Dynamics isn't just counting opens and clicks. It pays attention to the order, timing, and even which device your prospect uses. A string of mobile logins at night sometimes suggests early research, while persistent desktop sessions in the middle of a workday often point to someone with buying power. There's another layer to all this: structured versus unstructured data. Structured data is the stuff you expect. It's tidy and predictable: revenue numbers, employee count, lead source, country. But the power comes when you combine those neat rows with unstructured data, like meeting notes or the random comment a sales rep leaves after a call. Even something as simple as seemed rushed, asked about discounts goes into the mix. D365's algorithms are built to parse both the organized fields and the messier scraps that get tossed in whenever a salesperson updates a record. That's where its predictions become a little more uncanny. It used to be that lead scoring meant ranking based on static info, size of budget, industry fit, or whether you shook hands at a conference. Modern models, though, lean heavily into those behavioral patterns. Did your prospect show up to the webinar and stay for Q&A? Did they reply to a follow-up with a question, or simply click unsubscribe? D365 tracks signals that can change daily, and those signals could nudge a score up 10 points or drop it straight down. Traditional qualifiers like band or a simple industry filter can't keep up with that level of nuance. By now, it might be pretty clear the quality of your predictive scoring depends entirely on what's flowing into the model. If your CRM history is riddled with half-finished notes or your email tracking is spotty, your scores may look reassuring, but they won't actually tell you much. Models only know what you give them, and the more comprehensive those digital breadcrumbs, the sharper the insights get. That's the real lesson. Garbage in, garbage out. Crisp, varied data gives you a predictive model that signals opportunity when it matters. But here's the thing, gathering digital breadcrumbs is only half the challenge. Getting meaningful answers out of that noisy data is where the real work begins. D365 isn't just a collector, it's a high-powered pattern spotter. So what happens when it starts putting all those signals together and actually tries to predict who's worth your time next? Pattern recognition in action, how the AI model sorts winners from window shoppers. Let's say you open up Dynamics and see a lead that on paper looks perfect. Great company, right role, even checked a few positive boxes in your CRM. But the score is in the basement. Meanwhile, another prospect, a name you barely remember, rockets to the top of your list. This is where the AI brain in Dynamics 365 starts to show its hand. When we talk about predictive lead scoring, it isn't just stacking up points for every single activity or box checked. Some interactions carry a lot of weight, and others are background noise. The truth is, not every click, reply, or call tells you much about actual buying intent. Dynamics is built to spot the difference and focus on the signals that, across hundreds or thousands of leads, have actually predicted success. This model thrives on the idea that what looks important to a human isn't always what closes a deal. The AI doesn't just take the word of a strong gut feeling or a friendly email reply. Instead, it chews through massive logs of past leads, their web histories, their replies or lack thereof, how quickly they respond after each nudge. Then it asks, when someone actually becomes a customer, how did their pattern of behavior differ from the trail left by leads who slipped away? The key here is separating the meaningful actions from the distractions. For example, D365 often finds clusters of silent openers, the prospects who open every newsletter but never go any further. That used to feel like a great engagement signal. But the model notices over time that these folks rarely lead to deals. Instead, it starts to prioritize the fast responders, the ones who reply quickly to a webinar invite or schedule a call after a demo. Imagine two leads at the same company, both with similar roles. Maybe they both engaged with your marketing team last quarter. On the surface, it looks like a toss-up, but let's say one lead responds to a follow-up within minutes and immediately agrees to a discovery meeting. The other opens your emails at 1 a.m., never clicks past the initial link, and refuses to accept a calendar invite. D365's AI sifts through months of outcomes and recognizes that historically fast responders have a much higher win rate. It doesn't need your rep's gut reaction or a detailed manual review. It sees the patterns play out in cold, hard numbers. And that's how a lead who looks average ends up as your new priority. This isn't just about stacking up surface details either. The model connects data from closed won and closed lost opportunities, assigning a probability score to each lead. How likely are they really to convert based on what thousands of others have done before? That makes predictive scoring a totally different animal than the usual manual processes like scoring sheets or band checklists. Old school methods rely heavily on static details you set up once and forget. Budget, authority, need, timeline. Maybe you give out 5 points for engaging with a webinar or 10 for a completed phone call. But D365 pushes that whole idea out of the way. It continually updates weights in the background, letting the most predictive signals rise to the top and downplaying those easy-to-game metrics that sales teams have learned to pad over time. Instead of every website visit being scored the same, D365 gives extra weight to repeat visits from the same device or timely email replies right after a product launch. Even things like clicks on a pricing page can shift the score more dramatically than a simple contact form fill. Every interaction matters, but some matter way more than others. A single meeting acceptance might nudge a lead score upward, especially if past data shows that people who accept within an hour tend to close faster. On the flip side, unsubscribing from a newsletter after a flurry of activity might tank a score, no matter how much engagement came before. And here's where most old systems fall apart. They can't handle nuance or adapt as buying habits shift. Dynamics, however, keeps recalibrating. It's not only remembering your wins and losses, but also reweighting what each click, reply, or call actually means in the real world. The mini payoff here is simple. This AI doesn't just act like a bookkeeper, tallying up interactions and spitting out a number. It recognizes over time that some signals reliably spell deal, while others are just noise masquerading as interest. And as the data grows, the patterns get sharper. So now you're staring at a predictive score next to every lead. The question isn't just who to call first, it's what to actually do with that information. Dynamics doesn't stop at the scoreboard. It pushes you to turn those insights into actual sales moves. Let's get into what those recommendations look like and why they might feel oddly specific for each lead you see. From score to strategy, what D365 recommends and why it matters. So you're staring at a long list of leads, each with a big shiny score next to their name. Most teams see that and immediately think, easy, sort by score, start at the top and work my way down. But if that's all you're doing, you're barely scratching the surface of what Dynamics 365 can offer. The system isn't just there to hand out rankings, it actually pushes you to be smarter about how you tackle each lead. The AI goes a step further, flagging intent signals that often hide in plain sight, and then turns those into recommended actions, not just scores. Here's where the human habit of chasing the highest number gets in the way. Just calling the leads with the biggest scores seems efficient, but it ignores all the context around those numbers. D365 tests the pattern behind every sale to suggest not only who to reach out to, but exactly how and when. Instead of operating on autopilot, you end up getting a kind of playbook written by your best performing deals. And honestly, that's where most lead scoring tools stop, handing you a ranked list and calling it a day. Dynamics 365 pulls you further into the weeds. It tells you to pick up the phone for one lead, but slow your roll for another until they show a stronger buying signal. Let's talk about the difference that makes on your actual workflow. You sit down to plan your day. The model won't just tell you lead X is an 88. D365 checks what actions you've already taken, what campaigns the lead has seen, and how similar buyers have behaved before closing. If the system notices that people with a certain pattern, maybe those who stayed on a pricing page after a case study email, tend to hop on phone calls and close quickly, it'll flag those leads for immediate outreach. Meanwhile, another high-scoring lead might get a softer recommendation. Invite them to a webinar, send a demo recording, or just let them simmer until another signal rolls in. Picture a recent scenario from a typical sales cycle. The AI pings your rep and flags a lead as urgent, even though the score didn't budge much since yesterday. A closer look and you see the difference. The lead opened a demo email and immediately filled out a form, the kind of double tap you normally see right before a deal moves forward. The pattern matches hundreds of past fast close deals, so D365 pushes that lead to the top with a specific recommendation to call now, not wait. Next on your list is another lead, also with a decent score, but their recent activity is low. They watched a video and ignored follow-up emails. Instead of wasting an aggressive call attempt, D365 tells you to keep them warm with a new content offer. The point isn't just speed, it's knowing which move actually gives you a shot at progress, not wasted effort. Now, the personal part. These recommendations aren't just canned instructions. Each lead's next step is tuned according to what's likely to work for their profile. You might see suggestions like send pricing details, invite to executive roundtable, or pause outreach for 7 days. It depends on everything D365 has learned about responses to similar actions at this stage for this type of buyer. If 6 out of 10 finance leads in your pipeline only convert after a webinar, that'll be your nudge. But if another segment tends to ghost after hard selling, D365 steers clear and lets the lead breathe. This layer of insight is what separates a predictive score from just another number on a dashboard. You could hammer away at your high-scoring leads all day and maybe you close a few, mostly by accident or sheer persistence. But once you start following the AI's strategic nudges, you'll probably notice your pipeline starts to flow a little smoother. It comes down to focus, less time spent cold dialing dead ends, more hours spent where your effort is likely to pay off. Teams that follow these recipe-style recommendations tend to see the business impact quickly. Shorter cycles, less wasted time, and better conversion rates. Sales reps stop chasing ghosts in the CRM and start getting into real conversations faster. You'll notice fewer touches required to actually move a deal through the stages, and your forecasts start looking less like wishful thinking. Plus, you can walk into your pipeline review and actually defend why you're spending time on certain leads. You're not just hoping anymore, you're working a process that's been shaped by the actual outcomes of your deals, not generic best practices. And here's the mini payoff. The real advantage isn't the score itself, but the system's ability to turn that score into a roadmap for action. Suddenly, your next step feels custom fit, not cookie cutter. There's less guesswork and more progress you can actually measure. Of course, even with AI in your corner, you're not running a perfect machine. No predictive model gets everything right, especially if the ground keeps shifting. So, what happens when a lead seems promising on paper but doesn't work out in real life? Or if market behavior flips after a new competitor hits the scene, that's where the real test of your scoring model comes in, figuring out how it adapts, learns, and keeps getting sharper with every feedback loop. The feedback loop. How every win and loss sharpens the model. Ever notice how a lead can ride into your CRM on a wave of high scores, opening every email, clicking every link, maybe even sitting through a demo, and then suddenly ghost you at the finish line? It's a reality check for anyone who's relied on predictive scoring. The natural question is what happens next? Does Dynamics 365 just keep pushing similar leads your way, oblivious to the near miss? Or does it actually take a hint and rethink what success looks like? This is where the feedback loop kicks in, and it's less automatic than you might expect. Imagine your team moves fast. You track every touch point and run every call, but in the middle of the quarter, one of your top prospects, complete with a sparkling score, drops out without warning. As tempting as it is to blame the market or shrug it off as bad luck, ignoring this outcome would be the fatal move. A Dynamics 365 is built to adjust, learning from both wins and losses, but only if your team feeds those results back in. Every time you mark a deal as closed won or closed lost, the system builds a clearer map of real-world patterns, updating what actually counts as buyer intent and what turns out to be noise. Here's where most sales teams slip up. Focusing so hard on pipeline velocity and lead volume, they forget the post-game analysis. If your CRM gets cluttered with old opportunities that never see a final status, or you treat lost deals like digital dust balls, it's not just your reports that go fuzzy. The entire AI model that's supposed to help you improve turns into a stagnant echo chamber setup, stuck repeating mistakes and learning nothing new. It's like expecting your car's GPS to avoid traffic jams when you never update the map. Data on actual deal outcomes is the only way the feedback loop sharpens D365's instincts. Let's make this less abstract. Say you launch a new product and send out a focused campaign. At first, your traditional hot lead signals go wild. Web traffic jumps, email open rates shoot up, everyone wants a piece of the landing page. The old model trained on your previous product launches slaps high scores on these leads, nudging reps to double down. A month later, though, you notice a pattern. Conversion rates are lagging, and most engaged leads are stalling at the proposal stage. In the classic set it and forget it scoring models, those behaviors would still scream high potential, and you'd be stuck chasing shadows. But Dynamics 365, when you log every win and every flameout, recognizes this isn't the old pattern anymore. Maybe people are only interested in reading but not buying. The AI starts to tweak its understanding, dialing down the weight given to landing page views and opening up new signals, maybe attendance at a technical Q&A, or repeat requests for pricing info based on what actually moves deals for your new offer. This ability to pivot as the real world shifts is a huge deal. Customer habits, market sentiment, even the time of year can change what good behavior looks like. If a big industry event floods your inbox with demo requests, Dynamo doesn't just assume you're suddenly excellent at demand gen. Instead, every closed lost outcome during that flurry forces the model to correct itself, especially if all you get is tire kickers asking for info and never circling back. It's a living, breathing feedback system. Active tuning is where things get especially interesting. You're not stuck waiting for AI magic. D365 lets you peek under the hood, reviewing which fields actually drive predictions, feature importance, retraining the model with fresh win-loss data, or even telling the system to ignore oddball cases that tend to warp the score. For example, if you land a huge enterprise deal that took 3 years and 27 meetings, you probably don't want that one deal to tip the model for all future SMB leads. Excluding these outliers keeps predictions realistic rather than aspirational. All of this stands in stark contrast to most legacy CRMs that treat their scoring models like concrete set during implementation, maybe revisited at the next annual planning session, and otherwise left to calcify. D365 expects ongoing maintenance and real feedback, the kind that makes every future score just a little sharper. Your model's accuracy, the thing that turns scoring from a guessing game into a business asset, only improves with this routine dose of real, honest feedback. When teams take score tuning and outcome tracking seriously, their sales process stays relevant even as the market keeps moving. So, if you ever find yourself wondering whether your pipeline insights are actually grounded in real world outcomes, or if you're simply hoping the predictions hold up, remember, your feedback loop is the only thing standing between you and a scoring system that keeps pace with your business. The more investment you make in closing that loop, the more you can trust the guidance you get every single day. And once you've seen what a learning model can do, it's hard to go back to static spreadsheets and old school scoring sheets. As your team adapts and your strategies shift, each piece of honest feedback becomes the fuel for the next big win. But that only raises one more question. Is your own lead scoring growing with you, or just standing still while the business world races ahead? The real payoff with predictive lead scoring isn't about chasing better numbers. It's about running a system that adjusts as quickly as your buyers do. If you're still throwing guesses into your pipeline, you're leaving all that adaptive learning on the table. Your Dynamics 365 setup only delivers if you keep feeding it the real story, deal outcomes, not just hunches. Most teams think they have lead scoring handled, but static rules mean you're missing out on genuine insight. Take a hard look at whether your own model is evolving or if it's quietly stuck and just hoping you won't notice.